Good morning. It looks like we do have some people online with us, but we will just wait a few more moments to make sure everyone gets on, and then we will get started with the presentation. Okay, Chase, it looks like nobody else is joining, so if you want to go ahead and get started, we can start with the presentation.
Yeah, okay, sounds great. Okay, well, good morning. Thank you for all who are in attendance today. You're at our public input session, so we're doing kind of a series of public input sessions throughout the city over the course of the past few weeks, as well as like the next few. And really the vision for this is that we're at kind of a different place with the pandemic and our services that we're kind of ready to start making some changes. And so we're wanting to gather input and feedback from the general public to find out just what are their priorities. And so that kind of guides our vision and what we're doing. So before we get there, just to go over the background again a little bit, kind of where we are today. So as you all know, especially those of you who are riders, we've experienced some major service reductions due to driver shortages. So we've been in a reduced level of service since August 2020. And this is not something that's unique to Tulsa Transit. It's something that every transit agency really is experiencing nationwide. And not even just public transportation, logistics people in general. So trucking, all of those are kind of in a major upheaval. And so we are, that's also a similar pool of drivers that we pull from. And so we're kind of in a similar constraint. So, and then some of the other things like we've had social distancing measures and just some with the service reductions. Now that we are reaching a different point and we've made a lot of changes and trying to get more drivers to come in and work for Tulsa Transit. And so we have a little bit more of a resource, and that seems to be moving forward in a positive direction. We're now looking at our existing service and trying to figure out what we want to prioritize over this next year in getting back to having a better service for our riders and our community as a whole. So if I were to take kind of our ideas and what we're thinking and to communicate those in just a few points. So overall, we really want to improve the service system-wide, right? So we want our riders to spend less time waiting for buses and on buses. We want to reduce those trip times. And one of the biggest indicators of that is frequency. So we are wanting to improve the frequency of a lot of our bus routes. One of the ways that we're trying to do that creatively, actually, without adding a lot more resources to the system, is we're bringing back 40 or 45-minute headways, like the bus is coming every 40 or 45 minutes. In the past, we did allow that to be 45. We had some 45-minute routes. And if any of you have kind of been with us since 2017, 2018, you might recall, we got rid of a lot of those 45-minute routes and we made them either 30 or 60, just in an effort to try to make our bus system more accessible to the general public. If you're not a daily rider, it gets a little bit more complicated in looking at the bus schedule. And so that was an effort that we made to try to make that more accessible. But that is something that for the moment we're going away with. We just want to get our bus frequencies down. And so this is an approach that we're doing that. We're trying to reduce travel times and make transfers easier. Another thing that we're doing as a part of this larger effort is we're going through our entire system, looking at all the ridership on each route and figuring out which ones are performing the worst. And this is really not even something that actually is happening as a result of the pandemic. Whenever we made our connecting progress plan changes back in 2017, 2018, this is kind of a normal part of that major restructuring effort. Is you would look at which routes are doing well, where we got it right, and where we got it wrong, which routes just really didn't pan out and do so well. And so we are looking at our service and trying to figure out which routes need to be adjusted or potentially even eliminated. And that's a big part of this process that we really want public feedback on. And then another one back by definitely a lot of popular requests is we're considering adding a Crosstown Expressway route from DAS to Midtown Memorial Station or Woodland Hills, which is now a new site that Woodland Hills Mall is now functioning in the system, kind of like what Midtown Memorial Station used to be. And so we're wanting feedback on that service change as well. So we think that'll be a very positive response from the general public. So, and really quickly, we do, I thank you for your attendance, but more importantly than that, we really want your actual feedback. So there's several avenues to do that. You can go online to surveymonkey.com. Follow that text right there. So if you search for 2022 Tulsa Transit moving Tulsa forward, just online, you can find this survey. Worst case scenario, you can also just email us if that's the easiest path for you. So, but we want your email, we want your feedback on everything we're going to talk about today. So, okay, so jumping right into it. So one of the big changes that we talked about is having more frequent buses. So less time waiting for transfers, less time waiting for that bus as you're sitting on the street. And so if we look at what routes used to be every 30 minutes, so we're talking about the 110, the 117, route 130, 140, and the 300. Those are routes that we know we want to prioritize because they have higher ridership historically, and as well as even today. Even though they're in the same place that a lot of the other routes are, they're coming every 60 minutes. A lot of these routes still have significantly higher ridership than the other ones. So we want your feedback on which one of those are most important to you and your travel patterns, but as well as other routes. Maybe, again, the world is a little bit different than what it was 2 years ago. People's travel patterns and mobility patterns are just different and they've been changed. And so we want to know which routes make the most sense to prioritize from your perspective. So please, on the survey, respond to that. Let us know which routes are most important to you. And you might know I didn't mention Route 700, the BRT. That route is going to stay at the frequency that it's at. It's funded in a little bit different way than the rest of our system, and so it's going to be a high frequent route. So please give us your feedback on other routes in the system as opposed to that one, because that one's pretty set. It's going to be a high frequency route no matter what feedback we get because of the ridership on it. So okay, and so as I mentioned, the Crosstown Express. So those of you who have been riding our system for the last several years know that we used to have a route called the 251. I believe it was the fast track. So that was just a route that ran from Denver Avenue Station in downtown to our Midtown Memorial Station. and it just went back and forth. And it was a really convenient service if you're trying to connect to one of the routes at Midtown Memorial Station. So that was very popular. At the time, we thought our system overall with the changes would negate the need for that route, though we still get a lot of requests for it to come back. And so, though our system has changed, so we want your feedback on if we brought that service back, or we brought back a new Crosstown Express route, where would you want it to connect to? So Midtown Memorial Station is where the former route that 251 connected to from downtown. But now I'm not quite sure that that makes as much sense for the larger system as a whole. There are, at our Woodland Hills sub-hub, there are way more routes that go there. And so that's, that has a lot more coverage and access to the rest of the system, and it's a little farther southeast, so you have a little bit better access overall. So we're thinking that that might actually be a better destination. With the resources that we have and the timing, it probably won't be served. We don't know that this express route could hit both of those destinations. So please tell us which one you think would be a better priority for you and your travel habits. And then getting into the routes that we're looking at right now that have performed fairly not as well in terms of ridership and just how much resources they're producing. So Route 480 is a route that has struggled since really the start of the service changes going back to just before the pandemic happened. I know a big part of this, the vision for this route was connecting 61st and Peoria to a lot of the jobs that existed at the mall, the Promenade Mall at 41st and Yale. That mall was, I believe it was closed. A lot of the stores and jobs effectively really started closing down around that same time. And so ultimately this route hasn't really panned out. It's had pretty low ridership overall. And so we are trying to figure out what if this route were eliminated, how would you as a general public or rider want to see those resources used? Would you want to see like an increase in frequency on heavier ridership routes? Because think of that route as effectively a bus that could be placed on another route to make another route more frequent. Or would you really just want to see some alterations made to this route and change the geography and potentially have it absorbed by another route? There are a few spots on this route. We have an idea of where, based on the data that we have, where people get on and off the route, but we really want feedback from the general public. So when I look at the ridership data, I do know that 41st and Yale has the vast majority of the ridership on this route. That is the major destination. And then 61st and Peoria would be second, but it's definitely not equal. There's a lot more ridership activity, people getting on and off at 41st and Yale. But in between there, I know based on the numbers that we have, Lewis and 61st and 51st and Harvard are also the two bigger destinations. So that's kind of the four spots along this route that we know have the most activity. And so what we want is feedback on if there are places within this that I'm not, well, really anything, whether it's shown in one of those four locations or anywhere throughout that corridor. We want to know where what services are provided along which parts of that route that you need to access. So that if we were to get rid of this route, we may be able to pick that up with another route that's related. And similar to Route 480, Route 401 is another route that had a vision whenever we implemented it with the Connecting Progress Plan back in 2018. It was meant to connect and provide better service between several different destinations, and also effectively serve as like a go between multiple routes, connecting TCC to the Osage Casino and several other places. And so we want to know the same thing. So if we were to eliminate this route or amend it, what geography that it covers would you want to have still served by routes 110 or routes 460? So we would not just eliminate the service and leave that area completely untouched. We would still try to bridge the gap in some way as best as we could. So which do you prioritize more? The geography changes and making sure that we still catch as much of that ridership area, or would you like to see those resources predominantly used and bumping the frequency up on more heavier ridership routes, which again is going to reduce travel times system wide. So, and I don't have counts for this route yet. We're in the process of sampling all those routes. It's kind of a big effort on our end to get the right buses that can track where people get on and off at to give us that information. But I would like feedback just on what places you want access to bus service to, whether it's provided by the Route 401 or a revised version of that or a revised version of the other routes in that area. So yeah, please give us your feedback. And that's all I have today. Again, there are several options. I know Drew can put them in the chat, access to the link to get our, so you can complete our survey. Again, we really want a lot of feedback. This is not this effort is not a, we don't have these ideas and we're wanting to take them to the general public to let you know. This is the time that we really want thoughts and feedback and priorities given to us by our riders and our constituents so that we know how we should prioritize allocating those resources out. So this is a great time to give your feedback and let us know what you think. So, and with that, I will go ahead and allow a few minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and Drew can read them to me. I think we may be able to even open it up for questions. But now I'll end the presentation and I'll allow that time to happen. So.
Yeah, Chase, we already have one question. Question is, could we get funding from OU to keep the 480 going to the campus?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm not quite sure. You know, I know partnerships are something that we're always open to as a transit agency. I know if the university were able to do that, I think that we would be open to it by all means. I don't know that that's an option for them or not, but good question. Yeah, I think the takeaway there is we're very much open to partnerships. Our funding comes from a variety of resources. Most of them are governments, though. It's not. I don't know that we really have any. We don't have any agreements with the university at this point, but we have worked with Tulsa Public Schools on paying for passes for their students, and we've wanted to work with private businesses. So I don't see why an opportunity like that couldn't happen if all parties were willing to do so.
And then Jane asked me a question about emailing to get the survey link. Yes, Jane, go ahead and give me an email and I will make sure that you get the survey so we can send it out so you can give us your feedback on that. And if we have any other questions, make sure to put them in the question box so we can get those answered. Okay, that looks like we don't have any more questions. I think we are good.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for caring about public transportation in Tulsa, and looking forward to finding ways that we can serve you better. Take care.